Colonel Reyes maintained her professional demeanor as Ambassador Zorn circled the space station's conference room, his segmented limbs moving with hypnotic precision. The alien's protective suit gleamed under the fluorescent lights, far more substantial than necessary for the carefully regulated environment. "Your species still employs projectile weapons," Zorn observed, his translator rendering his crystalline voice into flat English. He gestured toward the ceremonial sidearm at Reyes's hip. "We abandoned such inefficient methods 8 centuries ago." United Nations Secretary-General Okafor leaned forward. "Our technologies have developed along different paths, Ambassador. Perhaps we can learn from each other." Zorn's faceted eyes reflected pinpoints of light as he tilted his head. "Learn? Yes, humans have much to learn. The Valakian Consortium spans 12 star systems. Our energy manipulation technologies have rendered kinetic weapons obsolete." Dr. Elena Sorokin, Earth's leading physicist, studied the alien with undisguised curiosity. "Your energy shields must require tremendous power. How do you generate sufficient?" "The specifics would be incomprehensible to your understanding," Zorn interrupted. "Now, regarding our proposal. Earth's water resources are exceptional in both quality and quantity. The consortium requires access to 60% of your oceanic reserves. In exchange, we offer limited technological exchange, nothing weaponizable, of course." Reyes noted the qualifier immediately. Her 20 years in military intelligence had taught her to recognize when someone was hiding their true intentions. 60% of Earth's oceans would catastrophically disrupt our ecosystems, Ambassador. Zorn dismissed her concern with a fluid wave of his upper appendage. "Your species can adapt, or relocate to designated preservation zones." The implications hung in the recycled station air. This wasn't a negotiation, but the opening stage of colonization. Secretary-General Okafor maintained his diplomatic smile. "We'll need time to consider your proposal and consult with our governments." "Free of your Earth days," Zorn replied. "The consortium is eager to begin extraction operations." As the diplomatic team filed out, Dr. Sorokin brushed past Reyes, slipping something into her pocket, a sample container no larger than a thumbnail. Their eyes met briefly in silent understanding. Later, in her private quarters, Reyes examined the protective suit fragment Sorokin had somehow obtained. The material appeared unnecessarily dense for mere biological protection. She contacted Dr. Chen at the CDC secure facility. "I need this analyzed immediately. Priority clearance Sierra 9. Colonel, I've got 17 potential pandemics and an alien biohazard assessment." "This takes precedence, Doctor. I think our visitors are hiding something fundamental about their biology." Back in the observation lounge, Reyes watched the Valakian shuttles returning to their crystalline mothership. The vessel hung in low Earth orbit, its translucent surfaces catching sunlight in dazzling refractions. Beautiful, but strategically vulnerable, the ship maintained no defensive screen against orbital debris, relying instead on advanced navigation systems to avoid collisions. Her secure comm chirped. "Colonel." Chen's voice sounded strained. "That sample you sent, it's not just protective gear, it's structural support. Their cellular density suggests extreme vulnerability to impact trauma. They're fragile. Catastrophically so. Their silicon-based biology provides advantages in energy manipulation, but makes them vulnerable to sudden kinetic forces. A simple fall could shatter their internal structures." Reyes watched the alien ship with new understanding. "So their dismissal of our weapons technology could be a critical blind spot. They've evolved beyond physical vulnerabilities by avoiding them entirely, not by overcoming them." The realization settled over her like a tactical advantage. Earth's delegation had entered negotiations believing themselves hopelessly outmatched technologically. But if the Valakians had no defense against humanity's most basic weapons— "Keep this classified, Doctor. I need to brief the Secretary General before our next meeting." As she ended the transmission, Reyes noticed a Valakian observer watching her from across the lounge. The alien's protective suit gleamed under the station lights, now appearing less like advanced technology and more like necessary armor against a hazardous environment, Earth itself. Tomorrow's negotiations would proceed differently. The Valakians might possess energy weapons capable of vaporizing cities, but they had revealed a critical weakness. They feared physical contact, and humanity, with its millennia of developing increasingly efficient ways to throw, launch, and accelerate objects, might hold an unexpected advantage against these seemingly invincible invaders. Reyes smiled for the first time since the aliens arrived. Sometimes, the oldest solutions remained the most effective. Dr. Chen hunched over his workstation, the holographic microscope projecting the Valakian cellular structure above his desk. The crystalline formation reminded him of semiconductor materials, beautiful, efficient, but fundamentally brittle. His team worked in silence around him, each focused on different aspects of the alien biology. "Dr. Wu, what's the tensile strength analysis showing?" Chen asked, rubbing his exhausted eyes. Dr. Wu glanced up from her station. "Confirming your initial assessment. Their cellular matrices can withstand tremendous heat and electrical current, but show catastrophic failure under percussion forces exceeding even modest thresholds." "Like hitting crystal with a hammer," Chen murmured. "Precisely. They've evolved on a world with high radiation but low gravity. Their biology optimized for energy resistance at the expense of physical resilience." Chen's secure terminal chimed with an incoming transmission. Colonel Reyes appeared on screen, her expression grim. "Tell me you have something concrete, Doctor." "More than something. The Valakian physiology is fundamentally vulnerable to kinetic impact. Their crystalline cellular structure shatters under forces that human bodies routinely withstand." Reyes leaned closer to the camera. "You're certain?" "The material analysis is conclusive. Their protective suits aren't just environmental. They're exoskeletons designed to distribute impact forces. Without them, even our planet's gravity would cause microfractures in their bodies over time." "That explains their dismissal of our weapons," Reyes said. "They're not just being arrogant. They genuinely can't conceive of kinetic weapons as threats anymore." Across the globe, Intelligence Officer Nathan Okonkwo moved silently through the shadows of the Australian outback. The Valakian scout ship had landed to collect water samples, its crew apparently unconcerned about human surveillance capabilities. Their overconfidence made his job easier. Okonkwo activated his optical camouflage suit, a prototype that bent light around his form, primitive compared to Valakian technology, but effective enough in the darkness. He approached the ship's landing struts, placing sensor packages at strategic points. Inside the vessel, 3 Valakians moved with their characteristic fluid grace, their protective suits glimmering with embedded technology. Okonkwo's directional microphone captured their conversation, the translation software rendering their crystalline language into text on his heads-up display. "These humans still use internal combustion engines," one Valakian remarked, its voice tinkling like wind chimes. "Their atmospheric contamination levels suggest they haven't even solved basic energy efficiency." "The hierarchy was correct to classify them as pre-integration," another responded. "Their weapons rely on chemical propellants and kinetic impact, utterly harmless to our defense systems." Okonkwo smiled grimly, confirmation of what Chen and Reyes suspected. He slipped beneath the vessel, attaching the final sensor package to an access panel. The ship's hull was remarkably thin, designed to withstand energy weapons, but with minimal physical reinforcement. A standard armor-piercing round would likely penetrate it easily. His mission complete, Okonkwo retreated to the ridge overlooking the landing site. He transmitted the gathered data to command through encrypted channels, then settled in to observe the aliens' departure procedures. The Valakians completed their sampling, storing containers of Earth water in specialized compartments. As they prepared for launch, one alien paused at the ship's threshold, its faceted eyes scanning the darkness. For a moment, Okonkwo feared detection, but the creature seemed merely cautious, not alerted to his presence. The scout ship rose silently, its propulsion system emitting only a slight distortion in the air, before accelerating toward the mothership in orbit. Back at United Earth Defense Headquarters, analysts pored over Okonkwo's intelligence. The sensor readings confirmed everything. The Valakians had no kinetic shielding whatsoever. Their vessels, weapons, and personal protection all focused exclusively on energy-based threats. General Santos assembled the Joint Chiefs in the secure conference room. The holographic display showed the Valakian fleet positions above Earth. Our conventional missiles could penetrate their hulls, she explained, indicating simulation results. Their point defense systems are designed to neutralize energy weapons, not physical projectiles. They've evolved beyond the need to defend against kinetics, Admiral Chatri observed. And in doing so, they've developed a critical vulnerability. Colonel Reyes nodded. Dr. Chen's analysis suggests their entire military doctrine is built around energy weapon supremacy. They haven't faced a species using physical projectiles in centuries. So our primitive technology might be our greatest advantage, General Santos concluded. There's more, Reyes added. Okonkwo's intelligence indicates they're not just here for water. They're assessing Earth for full colonization. Those water samples contained soil analysis packets. The room fell silent as the implications settled. The Valakians weren't negotiating. They were preparing for invasion, confident in their technological superiority. We need to test our theory, Admiral Chatri said finally, in a controlled environment, before they realize our potential advantage. Colonel Reyes smiled. I believe I can arrange a demonstration during tomorrow's diplomatic exchange. Something small, something they won't perceive as threatening, until it's too late. The Geneva Convention Center hummed with tension. Delegates from all nations watched as Ambassador Zorn concluded his demonstration, the remains of the military tank still glowing red-hot on the display platform. The Valakian delegation chittered among themselves, their crystalline laughter echoing through the cavernous space. Your most sophisticated armor, Zorn gestured dismissively at the molten wreckage, cannot withstand even our civilian-grade weaponry. The translator rendered his tone as condescending, though humans were still learning to interpret Valakian emotional cues. Colonel Reyes exchanged a glance with Secretary General Okafor, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. It was time. Ambassador, Reyes stepped forward, her voice carrying across the hushed chamber. Your demonstration is impressive. Would you permit us a similar opportunity to showcase our capabilities? A simple comparison of technologies. Zorn's faceted eyes caught the light as he tilted his head. Your weapons have no value for comparison, but if it satisfies your species' pride, we will indulge this request. The murmurs among the human delegation grew. Many world leaders appeared uncomfortable with this provocation, unaware of what Reyes had planned. We proposed a straightforward test, Reyes continued. Your standard defensive shield against one of our standard weapons. A fair assessment. Zorn conferred briefly with his advisors before responding. Acceptable. Deploy your most advanced energy weapon. Actually, Reyes smiled, we prefer to use something more conventional. Captain Sarah Zhang stepped onto the platform, carrying what appeared to be an antique bolt-action rifle. The weapon looked almost comically outdated next to the sleek Valakian technology. Several human delegates gasped at the apparent insult, bringing a museum piece to challenge alien superiority. Zhang, a champion marksman with 17 international medals, positioned herself at the designated firing position. Her expression remained professionally neutral despite the stakes. This is a modified Remington 700 rifle, Reyes explained, a design virtually unchanged for over a century. It fires a standard 7.62 mm lead projectile propelled by chemical combustion. The Valakian delegation's translator struggled to keep up with the sudden burst of amused cheering. Zorn's upper appendages rippled in what xenolinguists had identified as their equivalent of laughter. You propose to test our shield technology with a primitive chemical-propelled metal slug. Zorn's translator conveyed his incredulity perfectly. Perhaps next you will throw stones. If you're confident in your defenses, Reyes challenged, this should pose no concern. Zorn activated a personal shield generator, placing it before the designated target, a simple metal plate emblazoned with the Valachian emblem. The shield shimmered into existence, a translucent barrier of energy that distorted the light around it. Our basic personal shield, Zorn announced, capable of stopping energy weapons 5 generations more advanced than anything Earth has developed. Your projectile will simply disintegrate upon contact. The chamber fell silent. Every eye focused on Captain Zhang as she loaded a single round into the rifle's chamber. The mechanical click echoed ominously in the quiet. Zhang settled into position, breathed steadily, and squeezed the trigger. The crack of the rifle startled many delegates who had never heard an actual firearm discharge. The bullet's trajectory was invisible to the naked eye, but its effect was unmistakable. The shield rippled briefly where the projectile passed through, completely unimpeded, before the bullet shattered the metal target behind it into crystalline fragments. The sound of impact was followed by a shocked silence. Zorn froze, his faceted eyes fixed on the shattered remains of the target. The other Valachians drew back, protective appendages raised instinctively. For several seconds, no one spoke. Impossible, Zorn finally uttered, his translator failing to mask the tremor in his voice. Your primitive weapon cannot. Kinetic energy. Dr. Elena Sorokin stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic protocol. Your shields are designed to disperse energy weapons, plasma, laser, particle beams, but they have no effect on simple physical objects moving at high velocity. The implications spread through the chamber like wildfire. Human delegates exchanged glances of dawning comprehension, while the Valachian representatives huddled together, their postures radiating alarm. The demonstration is concluded, Zorn announced abruptly. We must consult with our fleet. As the Valachian delegation hastily departed, Secretary General Okafor approached Colonel Reyes. You've provoked them, he whispered, concern evident in his voice. We've revealed the truth, Reyes replied. They came here believing us defenseless. Now they know differently. They'll attack, Okafor predicted grimly. Yes, Reyes agreed, but not with the confidence they had an hour ago. Alert all military commands. Maintain defensive postures only, but prepare conventional weapon systems for deployment. Outside the convention center, the sky was already changing. Valachian ships repositioned in low orbit, their crystalline forms catching the sunlight in ominous patterns. The diplomatic phase had ended. Earth had revealed its hidden advantage. Now the Valachians would respond with force. Captain Zhang secured her rifle, her expression solemn. I never thought I'd start an interstellar war with a 100-year-old hunting rifle. You didn't start it, Colonel Reyes corrected, watching the alien ships through the windows. You just leveled the playing field. Lieutenant James Okoro crouched behind the crumbled remains of the physics building. His squad spread out in defensive positions along the university perimeter. Dawn painted the LIGO skyline in hues of amber and gold, a beautiful contrast to the destruction surrounding them. 3 Valachian landing craft had touched down in the central campus 30 minutes earlier, their crystalline hulls glinting in the early morning light. Status report, Okoro whispered into his comm. East Quadrant clear, came Sergeant Adayemi's response. Civilians evacuated through the underground tunnels, 2 hostiles moving toward the library. West Quadrant holding, Corporal Mensa added. We've got 5 tangos approaching the administrative building. They're scanning for electronics but ignoring conventional signatures. Okoro checked his weapon, a simple M4 carbine with standard ammunition. After the Geneva revelation, militaries worldwide had scrambled to redistribute conventional firearms. Energy weapons and experimental railguns were suddenly sidelined in favor of reliable ballistic options. Remember, confirming Dr. Chen's analysis is priority 1. Okoro reminded his team. Defensive engagement only. Let them make the first move. He didn't wait long. A brilliant green energy beam sliced through the remaining wall of the physics department, vaporizing concrete and steel. Valakian troops advanced in formation, their protective suits gleaming in the morning light. Each alien carried what appeared to be an energy rifle, though xenotechnology experts were still debating their exact function. Okoro steadied his breathing. Hold position. Wait for my signal. The Valakians moved with eerie grace, their segmented limbs allowing fluid movement despite the bulky protective gear. They appeared confident, scanning buildings with handheld devices while occasionally firing energy weapons at larger structures, seemingly uninterested in searching for human defenders. They're not even looking for us, Mensah observed through the comm. They think we've run. Or they don't consider us threats, Okoro replied. Sergeant, can you confirm visual on their protective gear, specifically around joint connections? Affirmative, Lieutenant. Their suits appear weakest at articulation points, neck, shoulders, and what passes for their knees. Okoro waited until the alien squad reached the central courtyard. All units, weapons-free. Standard ammunition only. Target joint connections and confirm effects. The first shots caught the Valakians completely unprepared. Their sensors, calibrated for energy signatures, had failed to detect the simple chemical propellants and mechanical firing mechanisms. Conventional bullets tore through their minimally protected joints, shattering the crystalline structures beneath. The effect was immediate and devastating. 3 aliens collapsed instantly, their bodies fragmenting upon impact with the ground. The others returned fire, their energy weapons carving glowing paths through buildings, but missing the human defenders entirely. They can't track ballistic trajectories, Okoro realized. Their targeting systems are designed for energy weapons. Confirmed, Adiyemi responded. They're firing in our last known positions, not our current ones. Within minutes, the engagement was over. The Valakian squad had been neutralized without a single human casualty. Okoro approached one of the fallen aliens cautiously, his rifle trained on the shattered form. Command, this is Defender Actual. Engagement complete. Chen's analysis confirmed conventional firearms are catastrophically effective against Valakian physiology. Their protective gear offers minimal resistance to kinetic penetration. Similar reports flooded in from around the globe. In Sydney, local police armed with standard-issue sidearms had successfully defended the harbor against a Valakian landing force. Outside Moscow, civilian hunting rifles proved more effective than military-grade energy weapons. From Buenos Aires to Bangkok, the pattern repeated. Human ballistic weapons, considered obsolete by the Valakians, cut through alien defenses with shocking efficiency. The Valakian response came swiftly. Their ships withdrew to higher orbits, beyond the reach of Earth's conventional missile systems. From this safe distance, they began systematic bombardment of major population centers, their energy weapons capable of striking with pinpoint accuracy from space. Colonel Reyes watched the tactical display from United Earth Defense Headquarters, tracking the orbital positions of the Valakian fleet. They're staying beyond our reach, General Santos observed, maintaining minimum safe distance for kinetic countermeasures. They've adapted quickly, Reyes agreed, but they've also revealed their fear. They're keeping their distance because they know they're vulnerable. Dr. Chen entered the command center, his expression animated despite the crisis. Colonel, we've completed analysis of debris from the Geneva incident. The Valakians aren't just vulnerable to kinetic weapons, they're catastrophically vulnerable. Their entire evolutionary path optimized for energy manipulation at the expense of physical resilience. That explains their strategy. Reyes nodded toward the tactical display. They're bombarding us from orbit because they're terrified of direct engagement. So we're safe as long as we can't reach them, General Santos concluded grimly. But they can reach us. Not necessarily, Reyes countered, her mind racing through possibilities. They've revealed their playbook, maintain distance, avoid physical contact, but they've overlooked something fundamental about human ingenuity. Which is? Chen asked. Reyes smiled thinly. We've been throwing rocks at our enemies since before we invented fire. We just need bigger rocks and a way to throw them into orbit. She opened a secure channel to Aerospace Command. Get me Dr. Patel at the Lunar Observatory. I need to discuss Project Slingshot immediately. As the bombardment continued across Earth's surface, the Valakians maintained their distance, confident that humanity had no means to strike back at orbital ranges. They had adapted their tactics, but fundamentally misunderstood the species they were fighting. Dr. Aisha Patel hadn't slept in 36 hours. The Lunar Observatory's main conference room had been converted into an impromptu war room, holographic displays showing Earth's satellite network and the positions of Valakian vessels in high orbit. Coffee cups and empty ration packets littered the tables where engineers worked frantically on calculations. The physics is straightforward, Patel explained to the assembled military and scientific leadership. Her hands manipulated the holographic model, highlighting Earth's existing satellite infrastructure. We repurpose communication satellites as targeting platforms and mining equipment as launch mechanisms. Colonel Reyes studied the display. You're proposing we turn our satellite network into weapons. Not exactly, Patel clarified. The satellites themselves remain non-weaponized. They become targeting systems for kinetic projectiles launched from the lunar surface. The concept was elegant in its simplicity. Earth's moon, with its low gravity and lack of atmosphere, provided the perfect launch platform. Electromagnetic accelerators, technology originally developed for mining operations, could launch tungsten rods at tremendous velocities toward Earth orbit. The Valakians will detect the launches, General Santos pointed out. They'll have time to evade. That's where the satellite network comes in. Patel highlighted thousands of dots representing Earth's orbital infrastructure. We modify their transmission protocols to broadcast false signals, creating electronic noise that will confuse Valakian sensors. They'll be looking for energy signatures, not simple metal objects. Dr. Chen nodded appreciatively. Their entire defense doctrine evolved to counter energy weapons. They'll be scanning for reactor signatures, plasma trails, not cold tungsten moving on ballistic trajectories. President Vega, attending via secure holographic link, frowned thoughtfully. How quickly can this be implemented? The Lunar Mining Consortium already has electromagnetic accelerators in place, Patel responded. We need 48 hours to recalibrate them for precision targeting and manufacture sufficient projectiles. 2 days while they continue orbital bombardment, the president observed grimly. Millions more lives at risk. We need to buy time, Colonel Reyes suggested. Reopen diplomatic channels. Make them think we're considering surrender terms. The strategy was approved unanimously. While President Vega initiated contact with the Valakian command ship, work began immediately on Operation Slingshot. Lunar mining operations pivoted to manufacturing tungsten penetrators, simple metal rods designed to impact with devastating kinetic energy. The Valakians observed the increased activity on the lunar surface but dismissed it as desperate infrastructure repair. Their sensors detected no energy signatures consistent with weapons development. In their arrogance, they failed to recognize the fundamental threat posed by simple physics, mass multiplied by velocity. Ambassador Zorn, now elevated to military governor of Earth, positioned the Valakian flagship directly above New York as a demonstration of power. The 17-kilometer crystal vessel gleamed in the sunlight, visible even in daylight as it maintained geosynchronous position. The symbolism is perfect, Colonel Reyes noted from the secure command bunker. Their flagship directly above the United Nations headquarters, the ultimate intimidation tactic. And the perfect target, General Santos added. 47 hours after the operation began, Dr. Patel contacted Earth Command from the lunar facility. The holographic display showed her standing before the modified electromagnetic launcher, a massive structure extending from the crater rim. First volley ready for deployment, she reported. Targeting solutions locked on all major Valakian vessels. President Vega gave the authorization. Commence Operation Slingshot. On the lunar surface, electromagnetic accelerators originally designed to launch mining equipment activated simultaneously. Thousands of tungsten rods, each no larger than a pencil, accelerated to 20 kilometers per second, a velocity that would carry them to Earth orbit in less than 2 hours. The Valakians detected the launches almost immediately, but their sensors classified the objects as debris, random ejecta from mining operations. With no energy signatures and minimal radar cross-section, the rods appear as nothing more threatening than space junk. Aboard the flagship, Governor Zorn received reports of unusual activity from the lunar surface. Scanning indicates increased electromagnetic emissions, his science officer reported, consistent with industrial operations. The humans grow desperate. Zorn dismissed the concern. Their resistance crumbles. Prepare to receive their surrender delegation. Colonel Reyes watched the tracking display as the first tungsten rods entered Earth orbit. The targeting satellites performed flawlessly, broadcasting false electronic signatures that confused Valakian sensors while guiding the projectiles toward their targets. Impact in 30 seconds, the tactical officer announced. Valakian vessels showed no evasive maneuvers. The first impacts occurred in complete silence, as befits the vacuum of space. Tungsten rods traveling at hypersonic velocities struck the Valakian flagship at multiple points, their kinetic energy transferring instantly to the crystalline hull. The effect wasn't an explosion, but something more fundamental, a catastrophic structural failure as the alien material shattered along crystalline planes. The massive vessel didn't explode so much as disintegrate, breaking apart into progressively smaller fragments that scattered in expanding orbital patterns. Similar scenarios played out across the Valakian fleet as thousands of projectiles found their targets. Direct hits confirmed on 87% of targets, the tactical officer reported, unable to keep the awe from her voice. The Valakian fleet it's just gone, Colonel. Dr. Chen studied the sensor readings with scientific fascination. Their hulls lacked basic kinetic protection. At those velocities, the penetrators passed through their shields as if they weren't even there. The remains of the Valakian flagship created a spectacular light show as fragments entered Earth's atmosphere, burning up as harmless dust that created unusually vivid sunsets across the northern hemisphere for weeks afterward. We've neutralized their orbital advantage, General Santos observed. But there are still Valakian ground forces deployed across 6 continents. Colonel Reyes nodded grimly. And now they know exactly what they're facing. A species whose primitive weapons just destroyed their supposedly invincible fleet. They'll adapt, Dr. Chen warned. Evolution favors adaptation. So does human ingenuity, Reyes countered. Prepare for Phase 2, ground engagement with conventional forces. It's time to retake our planet. Captain Rahul Singh checked his equipment one final time as the assault shuttle approached the crippled Valakian cruiser. The vessel hung in low Earth orbit, its crystalline hull fractured but intact, one of the few alien ships that hadn't completely disintegrated during Operation Slingshot. 90 seconds to breach point, the pilot announced over the comm. Minimal energy signatures detected. Ship appears to be on emergency power. Singh surveyed his 12-person team, a multinational special forces unit assembled specifically for this mission. Each soldier carried conventional firearms with specialized ammunition designed by Dr. Chen's team, low-velocity rounds that would penetrate Valakian protective gear without shattering the entire ship's hull. Remember, Singh addressed his team, our primary objective is intelligence gathering. The Valakians have deployed ground forces across 6 continents. We need their command protocols, tactical databases, and biological information. Sergeant Kimiko Tanaka checked her weapon. Rules of engagement, sir. Non-lethal where possible, Singh replied. We need prisoners for interrogation, but make no mistake, these aliens are still dangerous. Their energy weapons will vaporize you just as effectively up here as they do on the ground. The shuttle's magnetic grapples engaged with a dull thunk, securing the craft to the alien vessel's outer hull. Technical specialist Vasquez activated the cutting torch, its plasma beam slicing through the crystalline material with surprising ease. Hull composition is consistent with Dr. Chen's analysis, Vasquez noted. Excellent energy dispersion properties, but minimal structural integrity under focused kinetic pressure. The breach team created an entry point within minutes. Warning lights flashed as the atmosphere equalization process completed. Artificial gravity detected. Corporal Rodriguez reported, checking his sensor pack. Approximately 0.8 Earth standard. Atmosphere is breathable, but high in silicon compounds. Keep filters engaged. Singh led the way through the breach, his magnetic boots connecting with the alien deck with each careful step. The interior of the Valakian vessel was unlike anything human engineers had imagined. Corridors formed from what appeared to be grown crystal, pulsing with internal bioluminescence that cast everything in a pale blue light. "This isn't constructed," Specialist Vasquez whispered in awe. "It's cultivated. They grow their ships." The team moved carefully through the alien vessel, following energy signatures toward what intelligence analysts had identified as the command center. They encountered no resistance for the first 10 minutes, until rounding a corner into a large chamber where 3 Valakians worked frantically at crystalline consoles. The aliens reacted immediately, their upper appendages reaching for weapons that shimmered with energy. Singh raised his hand in what xenolinguists had identified as a Valakian peace gesture, but the aliens were beyond diplomacy. They fired their weapons, streams of coherent energy that splashed against the corridor walls, missing the human team entirely. Their targeting systems are calibrated for energy weapons, Singh realized. They're tracking heat signatures, not physical bodies. The team responded with precise fire. The specialized rubber bullets passed effortlessly through the aliens' energy-dispersing armor, impacting with enough force to incapacitate without killing. The Valakians collapsed in heaps of segmented limbs, their crystalline bodies intact but immobilized. "Secure them for transport," Singh ordered. "Careful with the restraints, pressure points only. We need them intact for debriefing." The team continued toward the command center, encountering similar scenarios throughout the ship. The Valakians, for all their technological advancement, proved remarkably unprepared for physical combat. Their weapons, designed to counter energy-based attacks, proved almost useless against conventional ballistic tactics. When they reached the bridge, Singh paused to record the scene with his helmet camera. The command center was a cathedral of crystal, displays floating in 3 dimensions throughout the space. At its center stood what appeared to be the captain's station, a raised platform surrounded by control interfaces. Rodriguez, Tanaka, secure the data systems. Vasquez, begin downloading their navigation charts. Chen needs their star maps and fleet deployments. As his team worked, Singh examined the captured command logs. The information revealed the uncomfortable truth. Earth represented an existential crisis for the Valakian Empire. Human ballistic weapons technology, considered primitive and obsolete by galactic standards, had exposed a fundamental weakness in their entire military doctrine. "Captain," Specialist Vasquez called from a data terminal. "You need to see this." The display showed star charts with dozens of inhabited systems, all conquered by the Valakian Empire over centuries of expansion. In each case, the conquered species had followed the same technological evolution path, abandoning kinetic weapons in favor of energy-based technology. They've been conquering worlds that evolved beyond physical weapons, Singh understood immediately. Species that developed along their technological path, energy manipulation, shield harmonics, radiation resistance. Earth is different, Sergeant Tanaka observed. We never abandoned ballistics. More than different, Singh studied the tactical data with growing concern. We're an aberration, a species that developed energy weapons alongside kinetic ones rather than replacing them. The intelligence they gathered painted a disturbing picture. The Valakian Empire spanned dozens of star systems, all conquered using the same strategy: overwhelming energy weapon superiority against civilizations that had evolved beyond physical combat. Earth represented not just a tactical challenge, but a conceptual one, proof that their entire military doctrine contained a critical vulnerability. Download complete, Vasquez reported. We have their fleet deployments, biological data, and tactical protocols. Singh nodded grimly. Prepare for extraction. Earth Command needs this information immediately. As the team secured their Valakian prisoners and prepared to return to the show, Singh took one final look at the alien bridge. For all their technological superiority, the Valakians had committed the cardinal sin of warfare, underestimating their enemy. They had dismissed humanity as primitive, never considering that sometimes the oldest solutions remained the most effective. Send preliminary analysis to Colonel Reyes, Singh instructed his communications officer. Priority message. Valakians vulnerable, not just physically, but doctrinally. Their entire empire is built on the same flawed assumption. The team's discovery would reshape Earth's defense strategy, and perhaps the balance of power across this sector of the galaxy. The Deep Space Monitoring Station on Europa detected them first. Hundreds of massive crystalline vessels emerging from what analysts later identified as a controlled fold in spacetime. Lieutenant Commander Sofia Rodriguez watched the sensor readings with growing dread as the signatures multiplied. Confirmation complete, she reported to Earth Command. 417 vessels, consistent with Valakian design, but significantly larger than the first wave. Current position beyond Neptune's orbit, moving inward at sublight speed. In the underground war room beneath Geneva, military and civilian leadership gathered to assess the threat. Holographic displays show the approaching armada, each ship dwarfing those from the initial invasion fleet. The intelligence from Captain Singh's mission was accurate, Colonel Reyes observed grimly. These aren't scouts, this is their actual invasion force. Tactical analysis confirmed capabilities that made the first wave look like a minor skirmish. Planet-killer weapons capable of rendering Earth uninhabitable within hours. Energy projection systems that could boil away oceans. Point defense networks that could theoretically intercept thousands of kinetic projectiles simultaneously. They've adapted, General Santos noted, highlighting the enhanced defensive systems. These vessels show additional structural reinforcement, likely a response to Operation Slingshot. But their fundamental weakness remains. Dr. Chen countered, his fingers manipulating the sensor data. Enhanced, yes, but not eliminated. They've added kinetic barriers, but the underlying crystalline biology remains vulnerable to physical impact. They can't change their fundamental nature. President Vega considered the options. Operation Slingshot won't work twice. They'll be prepared for lunar-launched kinetic weapons. Agreed, Colonel Reyes nodded. Their point defense systems could neutralize anything we launch from Earth or lunar positions. We need something they won't expect, something their sensors aren't calibrated to detect. Mining Administrator Keisha Williams had remained silent throughout the briefing. Now she stepped forward, activating her own data display. I may have a solution. The holographic projection shifted to show the asteroid belt operations, massive facilities extracting nickel iron from the abundant space rocks between Mars and Jupiter. My corporation has 37 active mining platforms in the asteroid belt, Williams explained. Each platform maintains navigational control over dozens of captured asteroids in processing queues. Understanding dawned on Colonel Rey's face. You're suggesting we weaponize the asteroids. Precisely, Williams nodded. We have hundreds of objects ranging from bus-sized to small mountains, already partially processed, fitted with navigation thrusters for positioning into mining catchments. The concept was audacious. Repurpose the asteroid mining operations into the largest kinetic weapon system ever conceived. Engineers worked around the clock, modifying the simple chemical rockets used for positioning asteroids into directional thrusters. The navigation systems required minimal adjustment. The asteroids didn't need precision targeting, just general vectors toward the approaching fleet. The beauty of this approach, Dr. Chen explained during planning sessions, is its simplicity. These aren't weapons by any conventional definition. They're just rocks with small thrusters attached. Rocks that will impact with the force of nuclear weapons, General Santos observed. Rocks that the Valakians won't recognize as threats until it's too late, Reyes added. Their sensors are calibrated for energy signatures, not ballistic trajectories. While preparations continued in the asteroid belt, Earth's remaining conventional forces mobilized. Military commanders knew the approaching armada could overwhelm any defense if it reached Earth orbit. The asteroid gambit represented humanity's best hope, but contingency plans were developed for ground resistance if the space-based strategy failed. Emergency broadcasts prepared civilians for possible evacuation to underground shelters. Nations temporarily set aside long-standing conflicts to coordinate defense plans. The Valakian threat had accomplished what centuries of diplomacy could not: genuine global unity against an existential threat. 7 days after detection, the Valakian armada passed Mars orbit. Their approach vector suggested confident advance, a force that anticipated resistance but dismissed its effectiveness. Tactical analysts noted the fleet maintained tight formation, optimized for energy shield overlap, but creating vulnerability to area effect weapons. They're still not taking us seriously, Colonel Reyes observed, studying their approach pattern. Despite losing their first wave, they believe their enhanced defenses make them invulnerable. Or they simply can't conceive of the threat we're preparing, Dr. Chen suggested. Their evolutionary path and technological development make kinetic weapons conceptually alien to them. They understand the principle but consider it primitive, like we might view stone spears. Mining Administrator Williams connected from the command center in Ceres. Operation Avalanche is ready for execution. 273 asteroids pre-positioned with Jupiter gravity assist trajectories calculated. Chemical thrusters primed for final vector adjustments. President Vega gave the authorization after brief consultation with the Unified Defense Council. Commence Operation Avalanche. Throughout the asteroid belt, mining platforms executed their reprogrammed commands. Chemical thrusters fired in carefully calculated sequences, nudging the massive space rocks into intersecting trajectories with the Valakian fleet. The largest, a nickel-iron asteroid nearly a kilometer across, required minimal adjustment to its natural orbit, its mass making it the cosmic equivalent of a sledgehammer. The Valakian fleet detected the approaching objects almost immediately. Their advanced sensors cataloged the asteroids, noting the chemical thruster signatures. But crucially, their tactical systems classified the objects as industrial debris, mining material set adrift during Earth's hasty evacuation of the asteroid facilities. They've detected the asteroids, the sensor officer reported from Europa Station. But they're maintaining course and speed. No evasive maneuvers. Colonel Reyes watched the tactical display, where hundreds of massive objects now converge on the Valakian armada from multiple vectors. They don't recognize the threat. For all their advanced technology, the Valakians had committed the cardinal sin of warfare, underestimating their enemy's resourcefulness. Heinrich Krell's transmission appeared simultaneously on communication systems worldwide. The Supreme Valakian commander's image dominated screens from personal devices to massive public displays. His crystalline features caught light in faceted patterns, his protective exoskeleton more elaborate than those of lesser Valakians, adorned with material that xenobiologists identified as trophies from conquered worlds. Humans of Earth, the translation matrix rendered his resonant speech. Your resistance, while impressive for a primitive species, has reached its conclusion. The vessels you destroyed were merely an advanced scouting force. Before you now stands the full might of the Valakian harmony, 400 warships with the combined power to reduce your world to molten slag. President Vega stood before the global response camera, her expression resolute. Behind her, representatives from every major nation formed a unified front. The broadcast originated from a hardened bunker 3 kilometers beneath the Rocky Mountains, one of dozens established worldwide as humanity prepared for possible defeat. "Hierarch Krell," she responded, her voice steady. "Earth acknowledges your message. We have observed your approach and measured your capabilities. Your demonstration of force is noted." Krell's faceted eyes shifted in what xenolinguists had cataloged as amusement. "Then you understand the futility of continued resistance. Your kinetic weaponry, while temporarily effective against our forward elements, cannot penetrate our enhanced defensive systems. Surrender now and your species will be preserved in designated conservation habitats." Vega exchanged glances with Colonel Reyes, who stood just off camera. The colonel nodded slightly, confirmation that Operation Avalanche had achieved optimal positioning. The asteroid trajectories were now irreversible, their momentum carrying them inexorably toward the Valachian fleet. "We have considered your generous offer," Vega replied, carefully measuring her words to maintain the deception for crucial additional minutes. "However, after consultation with Earth's unified leadership, we must respectfully decline." Krell's translator rendered his response with unmistakable disdain. "Your primitive defiance condemns your species to extinction. Our weapons are already locked on your population centers. You have no remaining options." "There's always another option, Hierarch," Vega answered calmly. "Humanity has survived on this principle throughout our history." The signal terminated abruptly as Krell cut the transmission. In the command bunker, all eyes turned to the tactical display where hundreds of asteroids converged on the Valachian fleet position. The first impacts were moments away. "Operation Avalanche status," General Santos requested. "All projectiles on final approach vectors," the tactical officer confirmed. "Largest mass, designation Hammer Prime, will impact Valachian flagship in approximately 47 seconds. No one spoke as the countdown proceeded. The operation represented humanity's final gambit. If the asteroids failed to penetrate the enhanced Valachian defenses, Earth had no remaining strategic options. The first impact occurred with unexpected subtlety. On the tactical display, a medium-sized asteroid, roughly equivalent to a 20-story building, intersected with a Valachian cruiser at the fleet's perimeter. There was no explosion, no dramatic fireball. Instead, the vessel simply ceased to exist as a cohesive structure, transformed instantly into an expanding cloud of crystalline fragments. "Direct hit confirmed," the sensor officer announced. "Target completely neutralized." More impacts followed in rapid succession. Asteroids traveling at 30 kilometers per second delivered kinetic energy equivalent to nuclear detonations without radiation aftereffects. The Valachian point defense systems, designed to counter energy weapons and smaller projectiles, proved useless against the massive space rocks. The largest asteroid, Hammer Prime, struck the Valachian flagship with devastating precision. The kilometer-wide nickel-iron mass shattered the 17-kilometer dreadnought instantly. Secondary fragments from this collision created a debris field that damaged dozens of additional vessels. "They're attempting evasive maneuvers," reported the Europa Station observer. "Breaking formation, trying to calculate safe vectors." But the asteroids approached from multiple directions, creating an inescapable field of destruction. The Valachian fleet's tight formation, optimized for energy shield overlap, became a liability as vessels collided while attempting to avoid the incoming projectiles. Within 20 minutes, Operation Avalanche had reduced the mighty Valachian armada to scattered remnants. Nearly 300 vessels were completely destroyed. The survivors, damaged and disorganized, transmitted immediate surrender signals on all frequencies. In the command bunker, the tactical display showed the debris field expanding through the inner solar system. Colonel Reyes studied the sensor readings with professional detachment. Preliminary assessment confirms 87% of Valachian vessels neutralized. Remaining vessels show critical damage to propulsion and weapons systems. President Vega absorbed the information silently before asking, "Civilian casualties?" "None reported," General Santos confirmed. The engagement occurred beyond Mars' orbit. No debris reached Earth. The surviving Valakians are requesting terms, the communications officer announced. They're transmitting recognition codes for formal surrender under what appears to be their interstellar conventions. 3 months later, representatives from 17 previously unknown alien civilizations arrived in Earth orbit. Their vessels, diverse in design but uniformly cautious in approach, requested diplomatic relations with humanity. Xenolinguists worked overtime to establish communication protocols as Earth prepared for its formal introduction to the galactic community. They're coming because we defeated the Valakians, Dr. Chen explained during the briefing. The Harmony had conquered dozens of worlds over centuries. Many of these species were former victims seeking alliance with the civilization that accomplished what they couldn't. In the newly established diplomatic reception center in Geneva, Colonel Reyes, now General Reyes, supervised security arrangements for the first formal galactic embassy. The honor guard carried ceremonial sidearms loaded with standard ammunition, a deliberate statement that wasn't lost on the alien delegations. They respect us not because we matched their technology, Reyes observed as the first ambassador, a methane-breathing entity from the Proxima system, approached the human delegation, but because we remembered fundamental principles they had forgotten. President Vega stepped forward to welcome Earth's first galactic ally. Behind her stood representatives of humanity's unified government, scientists who had decoded alien biology, and military leaders who had defended Earth with ingenuity rather than superior technology. "Welcome to Earth," she greeted the alien delegation. "We look forward to peaceful exchange between our civilizations." The Proximan ambassador's translator rendered their response with perfect clarity. "We come seeking alliance with the species wise enough to retain its primitive weapons. In doing so, you have changed the balance of power across this spiral arm." The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Technological advancement didn't always mean abandoning fundamental principles. Sometimes, the oldest solutions remained the most effective, a truth humanity had never forgotten.